Guys, this is your lesson for 2.6. Oops, looks like I'm going to have to calibrate here. But if you look at your notes, you'll see the slide that's going to disappear here for a minute. What I want to do is see if you guys remember how to divide decimals or not. So take a look at this problem. There, you can see it now. That's 4 divided by 2/10. And you've got multiple choice here. See if you can figure out the answer. So hit pause, take a minute, try to figure out the answer, and circle the correct answer or what you think is the correct answer. All right, I'm not going to tell you the correct answer now. I will tell you at the end of the lesson. So let's see if you were correct and see what you remembered about dividing decimals. Let's move on in our lesson for now. So example 1, we have 13 and 55/100ths divided by 5. Now one of the first tricks you're going to have to remember for dividing here is how do I set that up in long division? Well, remember in long division, this number under here is called your dividend. This number out here is your divisor. Well, when we see a division problem written this way, that very first number is actually your dividend. That second number is your divisor. Which means that when you go to set this up for long division, it's almost like it's written backwards. This is actually the number that goes underneath the long division sign. This is the number that goes outside the long division sign. So that means that 5 is actually the first number that you write. And that 13 and 55/100ths is actually the second number that you write. So that's the first thing you need to remember for these long division problems. With decimal division, the divisor, so this number out here, has to be a whole number. If it's not, you need to fix that. Well, for this problem, we're good. 5 is a whole number. A whole number means it doesn't have a decimal. It doesn't have any part after the decimal like this. So we're good. So what do I do about the decimal in my dividend, and where does the decimal go in my quotient? Well, wherever it is in my dividend, it goes in the same spot in my quotient. Kind of like adding and subtracting, right? So I just move it on up. Now when I go to divide, I'm going to pretend like that decimal isn't there, kind of like multiplication. We're going to treat this like it's just 1, 3, 5, 5, and no decimals. So how many times does 5 go into 1? 0 times. If you used to write x's back in elementary when they couldn't go into it, instead, please write a 0, because now when we have decimal problems, you may need that 0 and x wouldn't make sense. So how many times does 5 go into 13? Well, that's 2 times. So now 2 times 5 is 10. 13 minus 10 is 3. And then remember, we get to bring a number down. Now, we're not worried about the decimal right now. We just know that that goes in our quotient. So I'm going to treat this like 35, not 3.5. So how many times does 5 go into 35? That would be 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35. I subtract and I get 0. Now I got 0. That doesn't mean I'm done because I still have numbers in my dividend. So I'm going to bring down that 5. And now do how many times does 5 go into 5? And that goes in 1 time. 1 times 5 is 5. And I get 0. Now I'm done because I got 0 when I subtracted and because I have no more numbers in my dividend. So that's what tells me that I'm done dividing. So my answer is 2 and 71/100ths. Let's look at another example. So now we have 1 and 64/100ths divided by 4/10ths. So first of all, the trick is, how do you set this up with long division? Well, remember 1.64 is actually your dividend, 0.4 is your divisor. So your long division should look like that. So go ahead and write that down if you hadn't already. Now remember I said your divisor must be a whole number in order to divide. Well, here it's not. 4/10ths is not a whole number. So we need to make it a whole number. We're going to do something I call move it over, move it over, move it up. And that refers to the things you have to do to the divisor, the dividend, and the quotient, okay, in order like that. So if your number is not a whole number for the divisor, you're going to move that decimal until it now is a whole number. For this problem, that means I only need to move it 1 to the right, so move it over. Whatever I do to the divisor, I need to do the same thing to the dividend. So since I moved the decimal 1 to the right, I need to move this 1 to the right. That's the second move it over. Move it up means, remember, wherever that decimal is in your dividend, that's where it goes in your quotient. Really important with dividing with decimals that you're very neat, that your numbers line up nicely or else you're gonna get numbers in the wrong spot or a decimal in the wrong spot. So take that extra time to be very neat when you're doing your division. Now I'm gonna rewrite my long division here because now I've got a lot of like egg cartons or whatever you wanna call these and squiggles, and it's a little hard to tell what I'm doing. So when I rewrite this, now that I've moved the decimal, this is really just 4. And this number, instead of being 1.64, is now 16.4. I wanna make sure when I rewrite it that I'm very careful to put my decimals where they need to be. And now I'm gonna divide. 4 doesn't go into 1, so I'm gonna write a 0, but 4 goes into 16 4 times. I subtract and get 0, but I'm not done because there's still numbers in my dividend. So I'm gonna bring down that 4. 4 goes into 4 1 time. 1 times 4 is 4, and I subtract and get 0, and there's no more numbers in my dividend, so I know I'm done. So 4 and 1/10 is our answer. Let's look at yet another example. So 4 and 27/100 divided by 35/100. Take a second and see if you can set it up using long division yourself. Hopefully you got this. 35/100 is your divisor, 4 and 27/100 is your dividend. Remember, we need to do move it over, move it over, move it up. So this divisor, I need to move that decimal twice to make it a whole number, which means I need to do the same thing here in my dividend, move it over twice. So now the decimal is going to be right here at the end of the 7. So then move it up, means my decimal should be there. I'm going to rewrite that. I don't need that 0, so I can just treat this like 35. It's a nice whole number now. 4.27 became 427. Even though it's now a whole number, still put that decimal at the end and put it up in your quotient. That A helps you remember to put it in the right spot in your quotient, and B, sometimes you're going to need to keep dividing past the whole number, so you might need to know where that decimal goes. 35 doesn't go into 4, so I'm going to write a 0 over the 4. 35 does go into 42 once. When I subtract, so I can't take 5 away from 2, so I'm going to need to borrow. Make that a 3, and this now becomes a 12. 12 minus 5 is 7, and I bring down the 7. How many times does 35 go into 2? Or not into 2, into 77. It goes in twice. I was thinking of the answer there. So 2 times 35 is 70. 77 minus 70 is 7. Well, I'm out of numbers, but that doesn't mean I'm done. Our answer is not going to be 12.7. I can't just put this leftover here after the decimal. That's not how it works. I need to keep going until when I subtract, I get 0 here. So what am I going to do? Well, 427 is the same as 427.0. And 0 and 0. I could add as many zeros as I need so that I can keep bringing them down until I get a number that when I subtract, I get 0. So here, 35 goes into 70 twice. 2 times 35 is 70, and I get 0. So now I got 0 as my answer down here, so I don't need to add any more zeros up here, but I could have if I needed to. So that's my answer, 12.2, not that 0.7 that we had remaining before. So if you have a leftover here and you're out of numbers in your dividend, you need to add zeros and bring those down. All right, 90 and 2/10 divided by 22/100. Take a second and set that up in long division. You should have gotten this. So 22/100 is your divisor, 90 and 2/10 is your dividend. Let's do move it over, move it over, move it up. So move it over, we need to move it over twice. So when I move it over twice here, that's past my number. Uh-oh, what do? Fill in that empty egg carton with a 0. Bring that 0 up to your quotient. Let's rewrite it so it looks neater. So that's really going to be 22 dividing into 9,020. Remember, put that decimal in, both in your dividend and in your quotient. Don't forget about it when you rewrite it. 22, how many times does that go into 90? 4 times. It doesn't go into 9, so we can write a 0 there. 4 times 22 would be 88. 90 minus 88 is 2. Bring down the 2. 22 goes into 22 1 time. 1 times 22 is 22. I get 0. Not done though, because look up in my dividend, I still have another number. So I need to bring that down. Okay, I have 0. How many times does 22 go into 0? 0. You need that 0. 41 is a lot different number from 410, so we need to put that 0 over it to tell that that's actually our answer. I am now done because 0 times 22 is 0. I subtract and get 0. I don't need to add anything here. So our answer would be 410. So it is possible to get whole number answers even when you're dividing decimals. All right, 272 thousandths divided by 4. Let's set that up in long division. This is my divisor, so 4 goes out in front. 272 thousandths is my dividend, so that goes underneath. Divisor is already a whole number, so I don't need to worry about moving a decimal out here, which means the decimal does not move in here. I just need to move it up in my quotient. 4 doesn't go into 0, so I'm going to write a 0. 4 doesn't go into 2, so I'm still going to write a 0. This is the situation where writing an X wouldn't make sense, because we need to know that that's a 0 that goes there after the decimal. So please make sure that you're writing zeros and not X's. Now does 4 go into, remember we're treating this like 27? Yes, it does. 4 goes into 27 6 times. 6 times 4 is 24. 27 minus 24 is 3. We're going to bring down that 2. 4 goes into 32 8 times. 4 times 8 is 32. We get 0, and we're out of numbers in our dividend. So that's our answer. But that 0 was really important. Without it with an X, we might think that the answer was 68 hundredths, and it's not. It's 68 thousandths. Now you can write your answer like this, or you can put that 0 that goes before the decimal. Both are okay. All right, let's look at our word problem. A candy store owner is splitting her 71 19 hundredths of a pound of Skittles into 9 jars. How many pounds will each jar hold? Now, since this whole lesson's on dividing, it's pretty obvious that we should divide. But a key word here that might help you, if these were all mixed up with multiplying, adding, and subtracting problems, would be that word splitting. That would be a pretty key indication that we want to do division here. Now remember, division, it's also important to figure out how to set up our problem. So which one's the divisor and which one's the dividend? Well, that 71 19 hundredths, that would be our dividend. The 9 jars would be our divisor. It's a whole number, so I don't need to move the decimal. So it's going to stay right here in my dividend, and I'm just going to move it up into my quotient. 9 does not go into 7, but it goes into 71 7 times. Going to need to borrow here to get 8. Bring down that 1. 9 times 9 gives me 81. But we're not done. We still have numbers in the dividend, so bring down that 9. 9 goes into 9 one time. And now we're done. Remember, word problems need labels. Look back at the question if you're not sure. How many pounds? So 7 91 hundredths pounds of Skittles will be in each jar. All right, this should be the last page on your notes. These are some problems for you to practice on your own without getting answers from me in the video. You're going to try these 4 and show them to your substitute teacher. If you've got them right, they will give you the worksheet that is your homework for tonight. If not, they'll send you back to try them again. And once you get them correct, then you'll be able to start your homework.